Balance Experience podcast.
Welcome. How are we?
Good, Jacko. How are you,
good.
mate?
I'm doing really well.
Are you happy to be on this earth today?
I couldn't be happier to be on planet Earth today.
Have you hit a few golf balls?
Today?
No. Yes?
No, I haven't today. No, I played on the weekend. Played at Monaval. Playing quite well at the moment, actually. Thanks for asking.
Wow.
Yeah. Handicap of 6.2 right now. So
that's pretty. You're getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. How'd you manage that?
The goal, just practice, I guess.
Did you have a few lessons? You told me.
I had some lessons with. I'll give him a plug on here, but
yeah,
Alan Toppy.
Yep.
If anyone needs some golf lessons, he's the man to see. Dropped me from a 12 to a 6 in a few months.
That's pretty good.
So, yeah.
Wow, funny what a few coaching sessions do. Wow.
100%. So, how are you, Nico?
Mate, I am well. Well. I'm looking forward to a good training session later today, though.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
Very nice.
I have a feeling I'm going to do some deadlifts.
Some deads?
Yes. Heavy
deadlifts.
Yeah.
Me and you did a little training session yesterday together, actually.
Not too bad.
Wasn't too bad. Yeah.
Although, we have a guest who I'd be scared to train with. She's fierce.
She is fierce.
She's fierce. Her name's the strong mama, Rachel Giampietro.
Hello.
Welcome, Rach.
Thank you.
Good
so
to
good to be here.
So proud to have you on.
No, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
We've known each other for a while.
Yes, we have.
We've had an interesting year, 2020.
Hasn't everyone? But yep, I will agree there.
Some more interesting than others.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think for those that don't know, Rach, you're a gym owner.
Yep.
You're a mum.
Yep.
And you're a coach.
Yep.
You're a wife.
Yep. You can tick all those off.
What else you got
Anything
there?
else?
And you're the strong mama.
And
yeah, aka the strong mama.
So tell us a little bit about like what your life is like. Like, who are you?
Yes. So my name is Rachel, but I like to call myself the strong mama. That's what Instagram says, so that's what we'll go by.
That's the reality, yeah.
But yeah, no, I am a mum. I have two beautiful children. Lucas is 5 and Bella is 2, and I'm very happily married to my husband Nick. Not this Nick.
No.
Another Nick, just to clear that up.
Different. He looks very different too.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so, and I have a business called Strong Mamas Health and Fitness, which started online, but I then branched out into opening a gym. And yeah, I guess that's in a nutshell, but there's been lots of changes happening this year and to come for next year as well. So, but yeah, that's kind of a little bit of a nutshell of who I am and what I do.
Very nice.
Thank you. Very good.
Yeah, obviously very passionate about women's health. Strong Mamas works with predominantly mums and mums-to-be, so all the way from preconception, pregnancy to postnatal. And I guess it stemmed from my own journey into motherhood and kind of finding that there wasn't many, or especially locally, high-quality coaches that really specialised in this field confidently. Let's put it that way. I didn't have anyone that I could turn to that I thought, in terms of strength training, could guide me through it. So
there's a massive difference between, you said that word, that key word, confidently.
Yeah.
Like you can know some stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you and I have had this chat before, Rach, but yeah, like there's a big difference between being like a specialist in this stuff and being a generalist when it comes to training mothers and knowing how to go about that. So
now PTs in general need to be generalists. Like you need to know a lot about a lot.
Yes.
But when it comes to women through this pre, during, post journey, like that, you can't just be an average Joe generalist or even a good generalist. Yeah. You need to be pretty specific.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So I guess that brings us to, where did the Strong Mama start, or where did that name start, and why are you the Strong Mama?
Yeah. So I guess I have always been into fitness, so I've been a mum for 5 years, but I've always sort of been into fitness for the last 10 years. I probably started like everyone did in outdoor boot camps and clean eating and cardio and burning calories and all those kinds of things. But then I kind of found my way into strength training and really loved that. And then I chose to become a mum, and I didn't really know anyone that was confident in training me. There was some pre and postnatal classes, but it was really low impact, and that was deflating for me.
Okay.
So I went from, barbells and heavy weights to a fit ball and bright pink 1 kilo dumbbells when I was sort of 12 weeks pregnant, and I was like, do I have to downgrade like this much? And there was, Dr. Google, I'm trying to look up stuff. It was very mixed messages. I thankfully had a great midwife that was said to me, look, you sound very self-aware and confident in whatever you were doing before to continue doing, which sounded great at the time and even still sounds great today, but we can get in a bit more detail of why that's not necessarily a correct or optimal thing to say. But that was the advice I was given back then, and so I kind of kept doing my thing. I knew nothing about the pelvic floor or abdominal separation and what that actually meant, and I kind of just winged it, to be honest. I didn't have any major complications in terms of my pregnancy, birth, recovery, and then I hit rock bottom in motherhood because it wasn't anything I thought it would be.
Oh, wow.
And what I know today about the purpose of motherhood and children and what the gift they are in terms of a mother or a parent's self-development, I kind of look back and think, God, I really didn't know what it meant or like why I actually wanted to become a mum.
Right.
So that kind of led to me to my rock bottom where I thought, gosh, like motherhood is not what I thought it would be. I thought that like I didn't really care about my job when I was pregnant because I was like, it's fine, I'm just going to become a mum and like I'm going to be a stay-at-home mum and I'm going to just love having kids and stay at home. And then I didn't. I was like, oh my gosh, I just want to escape. But then I also feel extremely guilty for saying that because I love my son, but I'm also like, oh my gosh, this is just not what I thought, and I just didn't feel fulfilled. And so there was a lot of development that needed to happen there, and after a good year or so of resistance and kind of sort of a woe is me, I ended up getting some help, and there was a few moments, but I went and saw Oprah in concert. Like she came to Australia to kind of do a big speak about her life and living through purpose and service, and it was a very monumental night for me. I actually went with my son strapped to my chest in the carrier, and a lot of things she said sort of just lit me up, like about serving and finding a purpose. And I went home and I made a vision board, and I kind of thought, what is it that I want to feel that I'm not feeling, and how can I navigate being a good mum, and also finding something that lights me up outside of being a mum, because I felt like that's what I was missing. And it just dropped in with Strong Mamas, and I was like, oh, I do love going to the gym, and I feel like there's no gyms where like other mums go, and how cool would it be if you could bring your baby and you're all mums, and like why isn't there anyone that does that? Like when I was pregnant, like I could have met a bunch of mums. Like there was just so many things that I was like, maybe that's what I need to do. Right. And I just ran with it. Like I searched the business name, availability, domain name. I was like, that's it. Registered it. Well, I was like, that's mine.
No one had taken it.
No one had taken it. I just felt like the stars were aligning. And I just like Googled. I was like, does anyone run anything like this? And I was like, no, okay, it's mine. Like, wasn't even qualified or anything, but I was like, I need it done. Got someone to work on a logo.
Okay.
Did everything before I'd even thought.
That's straight out action, no hesitation.
Yeah, like that's how I knew it was just aligned. Like
epic.
It just dropped in.
And how old was Lucas when this happened?
He was 1.5.
1.5. Okay, so there was sort of a transition period there where, once Lucas was born, and maybe you trying to discover like a little bit of purpose as well.
Yeah.
Maybe personally, would that be right? Would I be right? In
yeah.
saying that?
So it took me I kind of thought also like, they say like the baby stage is the hardest when they're a newborn, and they get a little bit older, and then it's like when they turn 1, apparently like they're a toddler and it's like easier, which it's not. And like, I was always waiting for that year mark to be like, everyone said it's going to get easier, and it didn't. And now I know that like it necessarily wasn't him. It was my perception of what I thought motherhood should have been, and what baby should have been, and how much he should have been sleeping and he wasn't. And my sort of just outlook on life and my ability to surrender, like so many things that I just wasn't able to do. And also that I didn't feel like I was living out my purpose and service. And for me, that wasn't just motherhood. So there was that hole that was missing for me.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said something when you went to Oprah. You said something about what is the feeling that I'm desiring to feel. A lot of people get caught up on setting a goal that is generally a what I want.
Yes.
But they forget that it's actually the feeling that that thing is that it gives them, that's what they want.
Yeah.
So when I treat a patient and I make a difference to their neck, whatever, lower back, whatever injury it might be, it fulfills me because I get my extroverted self gets a dopamine hit.
Yes. From seeing there.
Right? From seeing that change, and then it's like, oh, that's better. And it's like, bing!
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that makes me feel fulfilled for some other reason, for whatever reason that goes deeper than...
So it's not the change itself, it's the product of the change.
It's the product of the change. But I can get that same feeling from getting a similar change from doing something completely different. I don't have to be bound to being a chiropractor.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you think that people get hung up on... Because you said there's a disparity between what you thought you wanted in motherhood and what you got.
Yep.
Is it because you wanted a child and you wanted to be a mother, but you forgot to ask how you wanted to feel?
Yep. I've never thought of it like that, but absolutely. And when you were saying all of that, there's Tony Robbins' quote that something similar to, it's not what you achieve, it's who you become. Something like that.
Love
Basically,
it. Yeah.
how people are searching for like that thing of a goal or whatever. It's like, no, actually, it's who you become in the process is what you're actually searching for. And I feel like, that's definitely what I came down to of like, okay, what is it that I'm lacking? Because in reality, I've got everything I thought I wanted in terms of...
I think it's a pretty common story with like new parents.
Super interesting.
And like, as you know, Rachel, like I'm about to be a new parent as well. And I think sometimes people, when they have a kid, their heads are in the clouds, obviously, about what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely like that.
I was as well.
But as well, like people also lose sight of who they are potentially as a person. And I think, and I don't know if you can add to this, but like maintaining some sense of who you are as a person is so important after you give birth. Like obviously your priorities shift quite a lot, but you still need to be who you are and prioritize the passions and the things that you really love to do and enjoy and things like that. So
and that's what the opposite of what I thought being a good mum meant, and I still think that's society's way is like literally who can get the most selfless award. It's like, how much can I lose myself in the name of motherhood or parenthood? And that was me. I'm like, you talking about selfless? I'll take that. Like I can do that. And I thought that was the greatest act of love. It was coming from what I thought was a good place, but then I realized that that's actually not what the child needs, and it's not what the mother needs or the parent needs as well. That's good for nobody. And it's so hard because you feel like, oh, well, that's my purpose, is to just be there and do everything that I can. But it's like, no, there's also some cons in that too. It's important to set boundaries, and it's important to protect yourself and protect your energy and fill your cup up outside of being a mom. Otherwise, you're running on empty, and that's no good for no one. Like, you're there, but you're physically not there. And that's what I was finding, is that I'm here, but what service am I? It's like, how am I actually enriching my son's life by being here? I'm angry, I'm reactive all the time because I just don't love what I'm doing, and it's not even you. You're an innocent, beautiful, perfect baby, being who you are, which is what you're exactly supposed to do.
Do you put that down to your expectations not being met?
Yeah.
So what were your expectations?
So my expectations were I'll have a cute little baby that smiles all the time and just goes to sleep, and I'll just get to show off my cute little baby, and it will be cute and funny and I feel like there is that, absolutely, but that's really small part of it. A lot of it is some really hard work, and if you actually, like, I'm right into conscious parenting about what it means, what a child is sent here to do. And if you go back to something I've just come across called conscious conception. If you go back to the real spiritual element of what it means to be a parent, it's like you actually call the spirit forth of the child that is meant to be here for you, to essentially expose your emotional baggage, to trigger you for your own growth, in that you're on a journey with them, not in front of them. So you're not here to essentially be the boss of your child. They're here to guide you just as much as you are to guide them. If you go real deep into it and surrender into that, I just was like, I'm only learning that now 5 years later, and that's obviously helped my second postnatal experience immensely. But I can look back and see, oh gosh, I just had it all wrong. It wasn't even that my son was difficult. I mean, he wasn't easy, but I guess no baby is. But I made it so much harder because I was resisting what he was sent to teach me.
Right. When you think of this is, this comes down to the sort of known science versus the science that we don't understand just yet.
Yes.
And when you think of, if you think of like the baby as a physical being and as an organism, and for what it is from a physical sense, it cells, it requires nutrients, it is a particular shape and a size. It makes a certain sound. Then the shapes are disproportionate in terms of who you are as a parent and who the child is. And therefore we assert some level of dominance over that being because we're naturally bigger, stronger, more mature, all that stuff.
They're dependent on us for their survival.
But is there a difference between the energy that a child brings versus the energy of the mother or the father? And I believe that the energy of the child is just as powerful.
If not more. They're unconditioned. We've been conditioned
to control
by our caregivers,
and limit that.
By society. They're born pure love energy.
Jack's smirking because he's at his scientific limit.
No. It's making sense.
I'm having
because
a baby. I'm glad I'm learning this now.
No, but at an essence, you're right, Nick. Like, babies only understand things that feel good. It's like anything. They understand things that feel good and things that don't feel good, right? So they act on their inhibitions, whereas we act on more of a conscious mind, right? Like,
yes. But we have that ability, we just lose it.
Well, that's right, yeah. I think there's some really good lessons, and especially for me here, Rach. But what I'm hearing, like a main sort of lesson from that is to be a good parent, and to be, not so much a good parent, but to be the best parent you can be, you need to be the best person you can be as well. Yeah. Spot on. And to achieve that means not losing sight of who you were pre-conception as well.
Yes.
Yep. And that's like so much easier said than done. And especially for, say, obviously mothers are usually the primary caregivers, and if they, choose not to work or can't afford daycare or all those things, then there's only so much they can do. And essentially, like, one thing that is guaranteed when you become a parent is that time is no longer yours. Time is driven by your child, and that's just the way it is. And there's a grieving process. So, and no one talks about it, but the
grieving process for time or individuality.
You grieve your old yourself.
You
grieve your old self. You grieve your old life. You almost think, oh gosh, is this really what I wanted? I just didn't realise.
Well, you were saying it before we came on as well. Like, you were saying, what did we actually do? Yeah, what did Nick and I do with weekends before?
Are you, and you don't have to answer this, is this still a very real thing for you? Like, this grieving process?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I still have moments where I'm like my kids are mid-tantrums, both of them, next level when there's two of them. And you just think, oh, yeah, cool, love this for me. I wish I could just snap my fingers and just be alone right now and just have no one and nothing to worry about, and especially running a business as well, which, I'm sure you saw it doing some business coaching with us, that, there's only so much I can do when I have two children that are dependent on me.
Most definitely.
In terms of time and hours, I'm just I can't do that unless I just forget that I've got children. So trying to juggle everything, I've had moments where I'm like, should I have put having a family on hold and just done a business? But then I'm also like, I am who I am today, and Strong Mum has birthed from me becoming a mum, so I can't undo that.
No.
I need to just figure out how to do it both, because it was meant to be this way for this reason. I am who I am today because of what happened to me. I can't go, oh, damn it, I should have just done this, blah, blah, blah. Like, it happened exactly the way it had to. I've just got to maneuver it now, and that's been the hardest bit. But I guess that's what makes Strong Mamas what it is, because there's so much passion behind it.
Do you find, so like postpartum, like the role that exercise plays for women, do you feel that a big part of that is the fact that they're just doing something for themselves?
Yes. Yeah. So I get 95% of, well, let's just say 100. They'll come to me saying like, oh, I need to lose weight. I put on so much weight during my pregnancy. I feel gross, blah, 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 blah. It definitely comes from a body image and I guess kind of feeling kind of perspective too, but it's very rare of like, you know, I want to invest back in myself. It definitely comes from a...
So how long do you find that process where women they lose themselves in their child, they succumb to the energy of the child, and they basically identify themselves as a selfless mother only?
Yes.
How long do you reckon that process usually goes for before they realise, holy shit,
I should do something?
Yeah.
Gosh, I feel like the reality of it is that there's a lot of women that just don't ever.
They don't come out of it.
Nope.
Yeah.
And then
I can see that.
They're just resentful, unfulfilled. There's a lot of resentful, unfulfilled mums walking around who, I guess, not blame motherhood, but you know, I guess that's the word, blame motherhood, or just use it as an excuse of like, well, this is what I signed up to, and this is just what it is.
Like some sort of resignation.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, well, that's the price I paid. Like,
do you think that might be? Do you think that might be because of like a perceived shame around not being a selfless mother?
Oh, 100%. Like there is. Well, the most amount of shame will come from the mother herself.
Okay, cool.
But I guess it's more
on herself.
Yeah, on herself. But it probably doesn't seem that way to her. She's probably more worried about what other people will think, or my children will suffer, or
make some sort of...
I have to lean on somebody else to be able to fill my cup up, and I'm not prepared to do that. So there's just so many things that's just easier. But I'm like, is it easier to not look after yourself? Like, who actually benefits from that in the long run?
Absolutely no one. And I know, like, because generationally as well, I mean, my parents are baby boomers and migrants. Yeah. And so I can pretty much... these are my mum's words, that she believes her life's role is to be a mother. Therefore, she still treats me.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's still
like a child.
For ways to. Yeah.
You're right, though, Nico. Yeah, I think that generation.
There is nothing less helpful than my mum treating me like a child still.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same thing with my mum. Like, I mean, when I was born, you know, my mum was straight out of work and hasn't worked like in a full-time role since, and has definitely filled that role of a selfless mother. And I know she probably went through periods where she was feeling the same things, Rach, as you feel today, or you know, you have felt in the past, where you know, the world revolves around your child.
Yeah.
And finding purpose personally for yourself can be a little bit tricky. So,
because we were born, have we all been born later than 1981?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
So
90s for me.
90s
you're 90s. Are you both 90s?
Yeah.
I'm 93, mate.
Oh,
and
91.
so with that attitude, right, from our parents, that generation, what do you think that's done to the Gen Y mentality?
Well, I think as well, they may struggle to see how you know, mothers react to having a newborn, because it just wasn't the way they did it as well.
Right.
It was a different time. Things were very different in the 80s and 90s than what they are today in many ways. I don't know what you think, Rach, but it's comparing apples and oranges, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, I mean, we were talking about it before, I'm one of 6 kids, so, and if the biological clock wasn't ticking for my mum, she would have just had more, because that's just what they did back then. Into, like, you know, my eldest brother's...
No smartphones, huh?
Yeah. No distractions, clearly.
That's right.
Stay focused.
Yes. So, like, well, and then that was the thing. My dad went and worked a ridiculous amount of hours. I guess was barely ever home, and so my mum's compensation was, well, I'll just have a lot of kids then to sort of, I guess, keep me busy.
Right.
And obviously, it's a beautiful experience bringing a new child into the world every time. I totally get that as well. But times are very different. Like, there's not a lot of mothers who can stay at home today.
Yeah.
So they're torn. So, and then it's also like, if they go to work, they've used up part of their me time. But then if they go to work in a job that they hate just to earn some money while spending time away from their child, and it drains them, doesn't fill them up, why would they think about, exercising on top of that? Like,
yeah.
So again, like, the priorities have shifted. Society's just different, or the expectations is different. So there's so many things that are different today. But when it comes to a mum being a mum and the whole selflessness thing, I think that's still around, but I guess it is a generational thing as well. But I guess that made me feel like I have to follow in the footsteps of my mum too in being completely selfless. But I didn't learn boundaries. I never really saw my mum say, you know what, I love you guys, but God, I love myself too. And I'm going to do something for me today. You're going to be watched by so-and-so. You'll be right. And then to see her come back so full would have been a gift. And that's what I feel like I've given my children. Like, in the last few years, I spent less time, especially for my son, I've spent less time with him than I did in the first few years. But I can't even explain how much he has changed because I changed.
Right.
And I, like, his daycare have said, everyone has just sort of said, gosh, he is just, he is incredible. And for the first year and a half of his life, I felt like all he did was cry.
Wow.
And I look back now and I think that's probably because I wasn't listening to him. I was feeding him on a schedule that a baby book told me to, and I was making him sleep because the baby book told me to, or the doctor told me to. I just totally did not know how to live from intuition, did not know how to follow my baby and communicate with my baby. Like, they are incredible beings.
In an intuitive
way. They
way.
can tell you exactly what they need. You don't need anybody else. Nobody knows your baby like you do.
Yeah.
And it's all within you. But if you have so much noise around you and you don't have that self-awareness, that trust, that surrender, that intuition, which is all there.
So I strongly believe there are two reasons for that. The first one is probably, two reasons that I can think of. The first one is probably the fact that 93% of communication is non-verbal.
Yeah.
But then there's another thing called quantum entanglement. Have you heard of this?
No.
So quantum entanglement is a pretty out there concept where under a photon microscope, pretty much our exact cells, I'd have to research exactly what cells they are actually shown to, if twins, as an example, under a photon microscope, the cells that are seen under a photon microscope are actually mirroring the same sequence and the same position in the exact opposite way, like a yin and yang would create with their twin.
So cool.
And it's actually got nothing to no boundary, it's not bound by distance. It's just bound by how each twin feels. But when you've got such a strong connection, with your child, or a strong emotional connection with anyone, which is why you feel like, I feel so chemically, like when you find your partner, it's just like this, like this amazing feeling that you're actually feeling the entanglement.
Yes.
There's nothing, and there is actual chemistry that occurs because your cells are actually molding to theirs.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
And that way you actually have, and that has actually been shown. And Einstein, Albert Einstein tried to prove it wrong, but in his quest, proved it more right.
Yeah. Wow.
I think you've told me this one before,
Yes.
and it could explain.
And there's a
like
great,
you're saying, like mothers and
how
children.
they just know that intuition. That intuition is.
They are a part of us.
Yeah.
And I guess that also is something that I feel fathers struggle with, because we are just like emotionally bound, and we go through the whole process together. There's a connection there before their earth side. it's not the same for fathers. So it's almost hard to navigate the parenting journey together. And my husband Nick and I definitely struggled in that first year as well, which obviously would have impacted me.
Well, the baby wants you more than they want the father in the first year.
Yeah.
Well, I think they have different needs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Nick's just like being down the pecking order, and like that's just what happens. But and then again, like I wasn't even fulfilled. So how can I show up as a mother and show up as a wife if I just don't even feel like I love myself or can show up for myself?
Do you think with the Strong Mamas and with your gym, do you think these feelings that you felt, postpartum, is this where your passion for women's health and fitness has sort of been driven by?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I just thought, God, I cannot be the only one. And if I would, dare to spark the conversation, mothers connect with other mothers, especially when they're like-minded. Just like you get that energy exchange.
Yep.
And you just feel so held and supported and loved, and you just know what another mother is going through. When you meet someone else and they're saying mum, it's just almost like, you have that safety net to be like, oh, you get it.
Yeah.
And I guess there's so many mothers who don't even know other mums, or like the mums that they do know aren't on the same page, or they've only got sort of their mum to go by, which, times have changed. There's so much more information out these days, free information. Like there was no podcast, anything out like that. So, I'm almost teaching my mum new things, and I've worked with older ladies who are just blown away with what I know about birth and motherhood, that they're like, gosh, I would never thought of that. And it's almost like I can see them wind the clock back 20 years thinking, gosh, how did I show up as a mum? God, but then I'm also like, it's not too late. If your children have children, you can be there for them and help them make these positive changes for their children. Like it's not too late if you're an older mum learning all this stuff too.
In saying that, there's a book called The Nurture Assumption by Judith Rich Harris. And she's one of the most renowned researchers in pediatric psychology. Developmental psychology. And basically this book is about the nurture assumption being, is it nature or is it nurture? Are the children the way they are because of their nature, or is it because of their parents? And actually it's because of their peer group.
Yeah.
However, in the context of their family and in the context of anything that reminds them of their family, they will immediately adopt the behavior and the type of relationship with the person that resembles their parents.
Yes.
Right.
That's the same as Getting the Love You Want book.
What's that? Oh, right. Okay.
In that we are attracted to what's familiar.
Yeah. And so we'll go back to our default if we're in the context that reminds us of our default.
Yes.
And the rest is actually molded by our peers.
Yes.
Right.
And so this is I find this stuff fascinating, because the way the relationship is with our parents, that sort of baby boomer sort of generation, I guarantee that we were all default back to a certain, unless one party decides to change that somehow.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how many baby boomer mums and dads still have the same relationship, that default relationship that they built with their children as kids.
Yep.
Going forward, it's just the conversation has just leveled up.
Yes.
However, the interaction is still
100%.
theme-wise is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still getting told by your dad.
Yes.
Dad said to me the other day, I'm like, I've got to go buy a new car. My side skirt's almost dragging on the freaking floor. I'm like, I've had enough of this car. It's time.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'll come with you. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well,
it's just always how it's been.
it's always how it's been.
Yeah.
And
So
his role's
true.
always the person that bargains for me.
Yes.
It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sit down, Emil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Tell some jokes.
Yeah.
But you get so used to having your identity as being serving your children, that then when they're older and they're well and truly able to serve themselves, you can't help but do that. If you don't do that, then who are you anymore? Because you're so attached to that identity, but it's not all that you are. And you're actually, it's a disservice to not let your child go and do their own things and just be that. We feel like we need to stop things from happening to our children, or fix things, or
so what should we do?
We're there to. It's hard because there's a fine line in terms of like, we there's an analogy of like, let your child look out the window, but don't let them jump. In terms of like, okay, you can't just be like, you know what, you are a free spirit, you do whatever you want to do. Climb that window and it's open and you're 10 foot high. Yeah, absolutely. But then, you're there to be like, hey, actually, I know if you jump, you could kill yourself. They don't understand that as a child. So there is that line of where we do have to guide them and teach
save
them
from themselves.
Save them but then that line gets so blurred and pushed back so the other way, of where we feel like we have to tell them what to dress, like how to dress, what to do, and like, don't do that and don't do this, and it's just
the trivial things more.
And it's so hard to it's just self-awareness of like, what are you actually projecting on your child? That's just you and what you've been conditioned. So we will parent how we were parent because it's default.
Yes.
And so conscious parenting is undoing that and having the space between what happens and your reaction.
Yep.
To go, okay, hold on here. How much of this is just going to be an instant reaction of conditioning and just projecting, or where can I actually, how can I create that space to be like, okay, what is the right thing to do or say here? So little things. For example, my son has refused to get his hair cut. He's always been quite funny, and these are some of the things that killed me. Like, he just was always a child. If someone touched him that he didn't know, he would cry. Okay. And I hated that because I was like, oh my God, like, why can't you just let people hug you and be cute and laugh? Because then they would always be like, oh, what's wrong with him? Is he tired? And I'm like, I don't know, like questioning my parenting. Yeah, and I'm like, I don't know. And then I would almost resent him, like, God, can't you just be happy? And now I'm also like, don't touch my child, go away. Like, just let them have their space. And if they don't want to hug you or cuddle you, that's your issue, not theirs. Like, there's so many things I could go into, but for something that he doesn't want to get his hair cut, so he's 5. So he was getting it done, and we really coached him through that. And then he accidentally got cut with the clippers, and that was it. I could see he was triggered straight away, and now it's been a traumatic experience. So he's at the point where he's like, I do not want to get a haircut. And initially I was like, well, you have to get your hair cut. And he was like, well, why? And I could not think of an answer.
True.
Yes. I was like, is he going to die?
Tell me he's got a great mullet right now.
It's borderline mullet. Is he going to die? Like, what? Is it a safety concern? Like, why does he need to get... Who am I to say he can't have long hair?
Well, Lucas, it's because of the social norms that we have established over
do you know what I mean? Like,
which you learned from your parents.
And I know that sounds so deep from a haircut.
Appearance for a male in our society today is with short hair.
Yes. Like, and honestly, I was like, because I like it better short. And I like to style it, or like, and then like now he has long hair, and he's so happy. Like, he just is not fazed by it whatsoever. And he's like, Mum, I want to grow my hair long like yours. And still part of me is like, oh my God, what will people say? Yeah. What will he look like? And then I'm also like, why do I care about that?
It's interesting because it's all opinions that are shaped from your peers and your parents.
It is. Yeah. And it's just like, wait, hold on. And this really, it sparked it's opened my mind to, I'm a questioner now. I'm like, hold on, why do we do that? And so my poor husband, I'm just sending him down a journey of like questioning everything. He's like, God, like, you're just a rule breaker. I'm like, well, I guess you can call it that too. I'm like, no, because I'm literally like, why do we do what we do? And there's so much in conception. The birthing system is just, I'm just going to say it's fucked. It's so controlled. There's so many mums with birth trauma, pregnancy trauma. It is huge. It's not spoken about, and it shapes their entire motherhood journey. It then translates to how they parent, how they show up in the world. Like, it's huge because there are no women who are confident to say, hold on, why are you telling me to do this? They're going to the wrong type of caregivers and healthcare providers because, again, it's just like the norm to go to private and go to a male obstetrician, which I still cannot wrap my head around. A male knowing the woman's body like a woman. I know I can definitely say... It is a male-dominated field. It is. It's male-dominated. Yeah. I've heard some horrible stories, like even last week, overhearing conversations between another mum of what her male obstetrician told her happens to your vagina when you give birth naturally, so she opted for an elective cesarean. Things where I'm just like, was I think that's necessary?
That's a really important point, actually.
Well, before we go into it, is that okay?
Of course, yeah.
Before we go into it, I'd love to, because you've had 2 children, you talked about how with your first Lucas, you basically did everything by the book.
Yep.
And then what was your experience with Lucas different to your experience with your second child, Bella?
Yes.
So what was your, like, let's start with, did you experience the private health road? Did you go through the traditional route?
So I was lucky to have a midwife that kind of opened that door for informed choice, and there was only so much she could do because I was still through the hospital system. But I did, when I fell pregnant, I was like, oh God, do I go public, private? And I was lucky to have older sister-in-laws, so my brother's wives, and one in particular who had 3 children, had a massive gap, and had gone on to have another 2 around the same time as me just before. So she had done the private for her first 3 and said, didn't have a positive experience, have had such a gap of self-development. Yep, for 3. And then for these last 2, went public and then actually had a home birth for the 5th one. And she was having a home birth at the time that I was pregnant with Lucas. So I could admire home birth, but I was like, whoa, I don't even know what I'm getting into. That seemed scary for me at the time, but I loved the whole natural birth thing. And so she really opened my mind up to that. And she said, look, I've done both private and public, and now I'm doing a home birth, would never go private again. To me, there was no benefits, and I had a better experience public. So based on that, I was like, okay. And then I was still not sure. I was seeing an acupuncturist at the time because I'd struggled to fall pregnant, which again was, I didn't see it at the time, but it was a huge lesson for me in surrender and trust and patience, and also knowing that, whilst I was trying, those failed pregnancy attempts were obviously not the child that was meant to be for me. So now I can look back and say it happened the way it should have happened. But I was doing acupuncture at the time as part of my preconception journey, and my acupuncturist gave me a book written by an Australian midwife on the pros and cons of private versus public care. And it just was so obvious to me that there were very rarely, if you were healthy, had a low risk pregnancy, which about 80% of women do, there was no need for a highly medicalized birth or pregnancy journey. So it just felt all right to me to go public. And there's private midwife groups in many public hospitals where it's really I forget the word, but like one-on-one continuity of care. So you barely even go to the hospital. The midwife comes to your house for the appointments. Like, it was really personalised, free. I was like, yep, this actually sounds good. Like, I'm low risk pregnancy. There shouldn't be anything that's high risk, and if you are, they can switch you to the public, the hospital system. So that's just what I did. Stars aligned, had a wonderful midwife who I felt silly almost being like, oh, look, I really want a natural birth. I didn't know what she was going to say, whether she was going to plant those seeds of doubt of like, oh, natural birth's really hard. Not sure if you can have it. We'll see how you go. She just was like, absolutely. There's no reason you can't. I'm here to support, guide you. Every time she came to my house, was there for hours chatting, and we really got that connection. I felt supported by her. She also could learn a lot about me and my values, and I was starting to grow and learn, and she gave me a lot of book recommendations. I opened up my world. And when you go private, it's like 10-minute from what I've heard, and I've heard a lot of the same stories, it's like 10-minute like ultrasound check. Yeah, how you going? Yeah, good. Blood pressure's good. Okay, great. Bye. There's no connection, there's no relationship, there's no like learning, development, there's no real space to kind of be like, hey, I'm a bit worried about this, or I'm a bit nervous about this. And met a lot of midwives now, and they say like most women put more thought and energy and time into planning their wedding than they do their birth. And then imagine if you rocked up to your wedding and was so disappointed about how the whole day went, and this person didn't turn up here, and this didn't go, and nobody knew that I wanted this and that. And like, that's what happens to so many births. And it's just like, well, where did the preparation, or where, like, and why aren't we meeting these people who are guiding us? I think that's
never compared that to a wedding before.
So I'm going through the private system at the moment with my wife.
How does that compare?
Well, I think like I can fully understand what you're saying, Rach, as well. Like there's definitely the quick appointment, and I think having a bit more availability for questioning, and more education on options for childbirth are definitely two things that are jumping out, which would be very important. Like thankfully, like myself, I feel like because I've worked in healthcare and things like that, I feel like my understanding of childbirth is not too bad. But generally for women, first time childbirth, and then they're finding out these things like low-lying placentas and whatever, and
and there are some genuine issues that require medical support.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I'm totally
but then
into that.
Also, like just having that general open dialogue where, okay, this is what's happening, these are your options, and this is your body. Like, what, where are we going to go with this? Not being so dictated by, I'm the expert.
Yes.
This is what you do.
Yeah, and if you don't know anything, you won't question it. And it's like, how dare
you're so uncertain.
You question? Yeah, and how dare you? Like, don't you care about your baby? And it's like, oh yeah, okay. And you do. You're vulnerable. You don't know what's going on. But then it's also like, hey, actually, we do know a lot about our bodies, and women are designed to birth naturally. Like, you can debate that or not, and it really triggers some people who don't know anything other than medicalized births. And I'm not for a second discrediting how many lives have been saved from medical support. That's obviously why it started, but it's flipped the switch now. It's like predominantly birth is medical, and it's like these hippies who do home birth, which is what I ended up doing with my second daughter, because I had such a positive experience through the public system. I laboured at home. I rocked up to the hospital literally at the last minute. The most uncomfortable, worst part of my labour was in the car ride to the hospital for my first. I literally got there, got told to push, and that was it. And I had horrendous tearing because I was in an unsafe environment. Looking back now, I pushed instead of allowing my body to just do its thing. So there was a lot of like reflection after that where I was like, I didn't need the hospital. And if anything, it made me feel worse. Felt very controlled when I was in there. They questioned everything that I wanted to, that I'd already gone through with my midwife. So many little things, like you get tested for you get a vaginal swab towards the end for a bacteria, and if you test positive, they recommend you have antibiotics,
which go straight to your baby,
right? Which I just was like, oh, okay, that's what you do. And my midwife knew me and said, I know you, I want you to go and do some research, go through, read your books, and have a think about it, and I'll support whatever you choose to do. And I looked at it and I was like, oh shit. And then the thing is, they don't tell you is that the GBS comes and goes, so you can test negative, and then the next day be positive. You can test positive.
What's the GBS, sorry?
So that's the bacteria that lies in the vagina, and it comes and goes all the time. But when you're pregnant, there is a risk that if you give birth naturally, the baby can contract it, and there's some health concerns there. It is rare, but obviously there is those stories.
But it's natural.
So it's natural flora.
But it's natural flora, and it's not even, it comes and goes. So you can test negative, and they usually test you in the last few weeks. And then you can go negative. Oh, she's negative GBS, guys, great. So no red flags. But then at the time of birth, you could be positive. It could have changed the flora in that time, and they don't test right away. So it's not even accurate.
So it fluctuates in the third trimester.
It fluctuates, and same with if you got positive.
So they test it. They test at that time to see if there's a chance.
There's a chance
that your baby can
but it doesn't suggest it's the case at that time. Yeah.
So shouldn't it just be a case of monitoring the baby at that point, or does it escalate too quickly?
And that's the thing is, like, most women will just say yes, okay, have the antibiotics, but I didn't want to do that. I understood.
They're just crossing their T's.
They are. That's literally, and a lot of what they do is
a liability issue.
It is. It's a liability issue. Even when I got to the hospital, my midwife had rung them and said she is GBS positive, but she has chosen not to have an IV antibiotics. I walk in, and what's the first thing they do? Try and put an IV on me. And I said, what are you doing? I don't want it. And they all looked at each other like, oh, okay.
We haven't heard this before.
What did you say? Yeah, like, no one says no. And
it's like the furthest away from a patient-centered approach. Yeah. It's like such a medically driven approach that it's like, these are your choices. The one I just told you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And then mothers don't realize how they will carry that for life. And you go into this whole new world of motherhood. The last thing you need is feeling like you weren't heard, supported, had the birth that you wanted. And when I say the birth that you wanted, it's like people think, oh, don't get attached to a certain way of birthing. You never know what's going to happen. 100%. But did you have someone who had gone through every possible scenario of, okay, if you can't have this for the safety of you and your baby, like genuinely this is not going to be the safest option, then what could be our next best option? There's always choices. And it's you don't enjoy your experience when you feel like, hey, like none of that was what even I wanted. Nobody asked me. And then you hear another story of a woman who got that experience and you're like, oh, what? I could have had that. Or like there's so much trauma and then you don't talk about it because it's like, my baby's alive and healthy, I should just be happy. And it's like, well, no, it matters. It matters how you birth. And that, again, comes back from who are you choosing as your healthcare provider? Like, who are you choosing to be on this intimate journey with you and who's going to support you? And then who's in your labour? Like, I remember hearing something like the way in which you conceive a baby, the environment or the setting for that is how birth should be. So it's not bright lights with 10 people around you and a lot of medical devices and monitoring that. It's a quiet, dark room. It's intimate. There's a lot of love. There's a lot of flow. There's a lot of support. Like, you want to generate those feelings. Oxytocin is your best friend during birth. It will guide your body into everything that it needs to do. But any amount of fear will stop oxytocin production, and then that just sends red flags to the body and basically puts you in a state of like, well, it's not safe to birth. So your body will try and stop it, which usually leads for your baby's in distress, it leads to cesarean, all of those kinds of things.
You mean with a highly medicalised approach?
Or just having someone in the room that
by
you don't...
going through meditative processes like, okay, breathe. You got to breathe, and it's kind of like, but that's just a way to regulate your fight or flight response,
right?
Yes,
because of the environment we put you in.
Yes.
Now, I don't think they're doing that on purpose. I just don't think they see the world any other way.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing right now is a direct comparison between the masculine medical world of transactions. Control, directness, speed.
Yep,
Ego.
it is. It's literally like, how many clients can I serve?
To the feminine world, which is all about nurturing, compassion, love, surrender, all that stuff. And birth is such a natural birth is such a feminine process to go through. I'm not saying the masculine approach can't happen.
Needs as much as like that. There is no higher high than the post-natural birth feeling, and like that, it's almost like I just say like an Energizer bunny. Like, it just gives you that high that is designed to help you navigate those first few months and beyond of motherhood, because you're high on that oxytocin. It helps with bonding, it helps with breastfeeding. Like, there's so many benefits. And when you're given an epidural, or you choose an epidural because you think it's the easier option and not understanding that your body's designed to do it and you're capable, you got those seeds of doubt planted, like, oh, do you have a good pain threshold? You should probably get an epidural. So as soon as pain comes, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do this, I better get the epidural. But they're not understanding what it does to your body, what that does to the baby. They come out drowsy, that can limit their ability to breastfeed. Then you don't breastfeed, you don't have that connection. You have the guilt about, I couldn't breastfeed, and you look at every other mum breastfeeding and you hang on to that for the next 40 years. Like, there's just so many things that stem back to the way that you were cared for during the pregnancy and the birth. And I'm not saying that's the same experience for everyone, but I can tell you now, I've worked with so many mums and I've heard so many stories, and I can't help but piece two and two together of like, well, how much effort and time did you really put into educating yourself and choosing the right person to guide you and standing your ground? And I've had women who have still had a good positive experience in the private system, but because they've been informed and confident to be like, I want this. And if you really put your foot down, most care providers and obstetricians will be like, well, okay, I guess she has a point, or I can't say no to that. But if you don't ask, they'll just do things their way.
I feel like our experience with the private system so far, we've got a female obstetrician.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see how this is the case with, obstetricians who are in the private system, but she's been super open and super available to talk about options for childbirth. And but I can see how that's probably not like a common thing to see in the private system. Yeah,
I just hear 80% of the time about male obstetricians, and then obviously, so after I had my first son, I had breastfeeding issues, and my midwife got me in contact with another midwife who is a home birth midwife. So there's a lot of home birth midwife groups. There's a bunch of midwives who are all private midwives who most of them are linked to a hospital system, but then they are able to practice home births. So she was a lactation consultant. I met her. The way that she just handled my son, her energy as a person, I just was like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with her, and I'm having a home birth next time, and she is going to be my midwife. I just knew it, because I just thought, what did the hospital system give me that I needed? Nothing. I was like, I'm capable. I knew my body could do it. I can do it again. And obviously you go through all the possible scenarios with your private midwife.
So for people that, because I've picked something up that might I want to clear up. When you say the hospital system did nothing for you with your first birth, are you saying that because the only thing that it did was provide you with a bed, and beyond that, was there any aftercare?
I had stitches for my tearing, but most private midwives are able to do that as well, and that was it.
Okay. And what about with your son?
That was it. So they just monitored him because I was the GBS positive and had no antibiotics. It was a requirement that we stayed for 24 hours to monitor his temperature to see if there's any signs of infection. But both
of which, the stitching and the monitoring, you could do at home.
You could do at home. So that's what I meant in terms of that. Was there anything that I felt I needed that I wouldn't have been able to get at home? And they were the questions I did ask my midwife as well.
And I'm not asking these questions to question you. I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, I love it. Go for it.
Did it provide you with any element of reassurance that your son was being monitored?
At the time, yes, I guess. But even still, I felt like they weren't on time when they said they would come. Very busy. Even with my stitching, I waited the whole night to see a doctor who never came. A doctor never came. A midwife just came the next morning and said, well, the doctor's been busy. I'll check your stitching. Why are you in a rush to go?
So you felt like it was just part of a big routine.
Because I really love being in a hospital
because I was like, I love being a new mum in a hospital bed with a catheter. I just want to go home. Gotcha.
What was the catheter for?
Because my stitching was so bad, they were worried that I wouldn't be able to go to the toilet. And so then I'm just cool. This is awesome.
Is the stitching something you can get fixed later?
Yes. So I mean, again, knowing what I know now, because I wasn't in a safe environment for me at the time when I was.
When you say safe, emotionally safe.
Emotionally safe.
It's a very obviously very
room.
Yes, and
very
also
sterile, safe environment.
Yes, it was very panicked, and I also was told you can push. That is the worst. In my opinion, and from what I know, is the worst advice you can give a mum is to push. You just see the whole push. It's like there's this fetal ejection reflex, I think it's called. Like when you go do a poo, like, you know, when you're just like, okay, I got a poo, like it's coming, and it just comes. You don't push it out, it just comes. That is literally what is designed to happen.
Do I ever?
Like, oh yeah.
Nick had a bacon egg roll with sriracha mayo and a piccolo this morning. So.
Oh yeah, that was gone straight through you. So you know the feeling.
No pushing required.
I was trying to hold back.
That is what happens in childbirth. You don't need to push. And there's a certain amount of stretching. So like the baby's head will crown first. So that's the baby's head just crowning through the vagina. And you'll stay there for a few contractions on purpose so that it just allows the vagina to stretch to minimize tearing.
Fair enough.
And again, oxytocin helps stretch the perineum. It helps stretch the vagina naturally.
And pushing suppresses that.
Pushing is just forces it. So you're guaranteed to tear because you're not allowing your body to just take its time. But most hospital environments are like, push, come on, we've got to get this baby out. Also, they make you push on your back. And if you look at the pelvis, it tilts when you're on the back. You'll see the baby pop out, whoop, pop back in.
Oh, you're joking.
And so, but what do all women do? They lay on their back. The most non-optimal position ever. But again, they'll go lay on your back, or get your feet in stirrups.
What's the optimal position?
Get in there. Forward.
Quadruped.
Yeah. I birthed standing upright, kneeling, and then when I was, for my second birth, I was in water birth at home, and I was on all fours in the
Wonder why they do that so often in the hospital system then, hey, like...
Control. So then they can get their forceps in, they can get the vacuum in, they can see everything, and it's just like, let me do it.
For intervention that might be needed, yeah.
And if you know, the midwives I've met say that they don't deliver babies, women birth babies. So it's this whole like, oh, he helped me deliver my baby. It's like, no, you birthed your baby.
Right.
So
it all comes back to a little bit of control of the medical system.
Yes, it's like just the words we use and like so many things. So yeah, for my second birth, I had a home birth, a beautiful, amazing home birth. I mean, the birth itself was just as intense. I think my midwife said every mother says it, but I was like, that was so much harder than my first, but I think you forget. But the whole, I was cared for and monitored more in my home birth experience than I was in my public system. So I didn't meet my midwife till I was about 18 weeks pregnant when I went into the public system. Whereas with my private midwife, I saw her from 8 weeks onwards.
I've always been a bit uncomfortable, and you know, I haven't had children, but I've always been a bit uncomfortable with the notion, the idea of my wife giving birth in front of a bunch of fucking strangers.
Yeah.
It's like, how is that going to make you feel comfortable to relax?
Yes.
And let the baby come out?
Yeah. It's such
the answer
an
is
intimate...
The answer is it does the opposite.
Yeah, and it does. And it's amazing that you can see that. I mean, and it's so hard for the dads and the partners to watch the woman they love go through a journey in which they feel almost helpless. But
legs up in stirrups.
Like, you know, and seeing, you know, usually a male obstetrician really like sort of almost butcher. Like some women will say they felt butchered. And like, that's just such a horrible experience and you can see all these women that are just so turned off having children and because of the experience they had. So, but I did a birthing course called Calm Birth, which I paid to do. It's not the free ones through the hospital, which again, from what I've heard, are just not what you need to hear. But I paid for that, and my husband Nick begrudgingly came along. But it really opened up.
I could just imagine his reaction.
It goes through the whole.
Okay,
every male in the thing was like, "Oh, hey, I'm here because she told me to be here." And then they're all like, "Yeah, me too."
It's like an AA conference.
Hello,
I'm here, and
felt better.
And I'm really not interested in this information
because I was like, you need to be interested. Like, I bet you all these guys are, and then they're all like, actually, no, she's just forcing me to be here. Yeah. But you could see by the end of it, they felt confident in knowing, like, okay, well, what is my role as a partner, dad?
They start to perk up a bit.
How can I be the man for her that she needs to be? Like, because I'm obviously physically not going to be able to do anything, but you don't understand your role in providing that safe space and also being an advocate for her. If you know what her deep down choices that or she really wants, if she's in la labor land, which happens, you can be that person to be like, hey, no, she didn't want that, or leave her. Can you give us some space, please? And just really support her. You don't understand the power in that. And if you almost feel helpless, it's a not a bad, but it's a sad experience for you too, because you're like, well, God,
it sounds like there's definitely a need for more open dialogue, more, women being made more aware of their choices, and not succumbing to the medical system's perceived approach of how this is how childbirth should happen.
Yes. And it's very important to make a note that we're talking about uncomplicated births.
Yes. This is low risk
pregnancy. We're not talking about...
Yes. If you've got a high risk pregnancy, absolutely.
Preeclampsia. Yes. We're not talking about emergency situations. We're not talking about breech birth. Yeah. We haven't even talked about one complication here.
Yes.
We're talking about
this is
normal, uncomplicated births.
But people forget to remember that that's over 80% of women are capable of a natural birth. But those numbers are skewed now. Like it's so rare to hear a woman who's like, I loved my birth experience. It is so much quicker, and you'll find that obstetricians will schedule it in on the day that they want it. They won't let you go overdue because they'll claim that it's not safe for your baby, when in most cases it is absolutely fine to go up to 42 weeks. But they will again tell you, baby's not here. We'll induce, and most inductions are again like your baby's not ready to be
because I have
birthed.
a back-to-back schedule today.
I don't have time to go through this tomorrow. And it's also, she's been in labour for like 8 hours yet. How many centimetres dilated was she? In both my births, towards the end in my first, but I was never checked for how dilated. So obviously your cervix will dilate during the labour process. And it's a common myth of like, okay, well, if it's been 4 hours and you've dilated 2 centimetres, it's going to be another 4 hours until you're another 2 centimetres, and you need to get to 10 before you're ready to push. And so again, you'll get constantly checked, which is very violating when you're in labour, to spread your legs and get checked. And then it also plants these seeds of doubt of like, oh gosh, God, you've been labouring so hard for so long and you're only 2 centimetres. But in actual fact, you can go from 2 to 10 in 20 minutes. Like, maybe not be that exaggerant, but it can be completely different. And that's what I found definitely was with me when I birthed a majority of my labour at home with the first. And then I got to the hospital and she was like, okay, you're 10 centimetres, which I didn't need to be monitored. My midwife said I could tell over the phone that you were fully dilated. She didn't need to check you. And so with my home birth, not once was I checked. There was no time. It's like, you've been taking so long. They just check the heartbeat and they allow my body to do its thing. She can tell by my voice. She can tell by the space in my contractions. It's all intuition, and it was such a beautiful environment. There was no getting in my space. She just allowed me to do my thing, and I had who I wanted to be there. I was in my privacy of my own home.
Sounds a lot more calm.
I just don't see. I don't see the medical world prescribing to this.
It's
subscribing to this. Sorry.
Yeah.
I don't ever see that even being feasible for them.
No, and
I think if you want a birth that's inside a hospital, you're going to get a transaction.
Yeah. It's very, very, very rare, which is why I'm such a pro home birth advocate. And I can understand a lot of women who are like a bit scared of that. Like, and I was for my first pregnancy too, but my niece, so my elder sister-in-law, which I spoke before about, saying that she had 3 children, had a gap, and then had 2, and the last one was a home birth. So her first child of her 5 was 20 when she had the 5th child, home birth. And so that 20-year-old child had a home birth for her first child last year. And she was a support person at my home birth. And I just think, how beautiful is that? She saw her mum confidently birth her sister at home. She then was a support person for me, seeing me birth my daughter at home, and she went and did that for herself for her first birth. So it is possible if you believe in yourself. And she had a big baby, 4.2 kilos, which guaranteed, if you were getting measured and you were told by your obstetrician you got a big baby, might get stuck in natural birth, again, they'll plant the seeds of doubt for you to just be like, all right, let's just have a cesarean. Like,
or push and tear.
I think I don't know. I'm hearing because there's obviously you've been educated and you've done the research. You've spoken to a lot of people, and you've had variable opinions and experiences. I don't know if I want to believe that the obstetricians will manipulate it so that they get the outcome that they want. I hope not. But if that's true, that's terrible.
I definitely don't get that perception.
I think they've seen too many things go wrong.
Yes, there's definitely that perspective as well.
And they are just more cautious than they are
due to liability, probably all the time.
And again, it comes back to liability and just trying to get the safest outcome. However, the safest outcome may not necessarily be the best one for the mother.
Yes,
sure.
For all parties.
For all parties, and and obviously the safest sometimes gets skewed, and it comes down to making sure that the mum and the baby
maybe
are healthy.
A bit too conservative, sometimes. Yeah.
But perhaps that conservativeness makes them quite rigid in their choice and their informed consent.
And there might be protocols around that. I'm not sure as well.
I'm not sure.
There is. There's a lot involved, and obviously I'm not a trained professional in childbirth, and I am going by all the stories that I've heard, and I've I'm friends with a lot of private midwives now, and I've heard a lot of stories. It's just I love sharing that. There is a lot that I've heard straight out manipulative stories, but I can definitely say that there are some wonderful obstetricians out there. There are still some. I've heard positive stories. Midwives have a great relationship, but they are extremely rare.
The biggest thing that I'm hearing right now is because when you're starting to get educated on what you're saying, the Rach, it's very easy to start to think that because I'm not hearing you discount the medical system. All I'm hearing is that there are innumerable ways around it too.
Yes, there's so many other options.
People are not educated.
And mothers need to explore,
Personally, I feel like this entire field is like a black spot in my understanding of health.
Yes.
In terms of what your choices are and what you're actually allowed and not allowed to do or should not do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that ambiguity makes you just surrender to what the professional has to say.
Yeah.
And I guess having a second baby gives you hindsight as well, right?
Absolutely. And
look back to your first and be like, I could have done that at home.
And even still, I actually found it funny towards the end, the difference in reactions, or the similarity, I should say, of when I would tell people, I'm actually having my birth at home.
What were the reactions you were getting?
Is that safe? Actually, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know. But what if you need to go to the hospital? Okay, well, I'll go to the hospital. And they're like, but, oh, gosh, you're brave. Oh, God, I couldn't do that. What, you're going to have no pain relief? I'm like, I had no pain relief in my hospital experience too. Like, it's just an assumption. And then so many mothers who are like, no way would I be doing childbirth without an epidural.
Okay, I'm really sorry. Naive boy over
Go for it.
So if you're at home,
yeah,
how do you manage the whole cutting the umbilical cord thing? So you just get a pair of scissors made, or I didn't get my kitchen scissors. She bought her scissors, thankfully. No, they obviously have their own. They have their own kit, and so they even have
the
midwife. So
it's not just Nick and Rach, mate.
Home birth. So
mate.
Okay, there's a difference. No.
I've gone into the wilderness here, guys.
So there's a thing called free birthing. So that is where you don't hire a midwife.
Oh, really?
And there is plenty, I didn't realize, but there is plenty of women who just birth their babies at home by themselves.
Oh my God.
So they do everything themselves.
I'd be shitting myself.
Yeah. So there is that is a big world out there. Again, they don't share it because they'll just cop absolute
It's happened
slack.
billions of times in the past.
It happens accidentally. How many women who are like, oopsies, had my baby at home? Like, it happens. So that's like the most extreme version. Home birth with a private midwife is the safer version. I don't know what you guys say.
No, I just
told me to shut up.
He said, it's happened billions of times. Shut up, Jacko.
You know what? It probably has happened.
I'm listening to Rachel right now.
I don't know how many, but free birthing's a thing. Trust me.
Are you going to free birth?
No, we shan't be doing that.
No, we're going to the private hospital.
And you know what? There's many unintentional free births. That's a thing as well, is where it's like, so Emily Sky is a massive fitness Instagram or whatever you want to call her. She had her second baby accidentally at home. She just labored so quickly, and it was on the kitchen floor. So that technically is a free birth. Nobody was there.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it happens. So again, women are capable of doing this, and sometimes you have absolutely no control. It just happens. So,
like Jacko said, made a very good point there. It's a natural freaking thing. Why are we trying to make it so unnatural?
It is.
It just comes down to the complications.
And
right?
To me, the home birth was the next best. It was the best option for me because I had more. Like I said, I had more care. In terms of my midwife was fully accessible all the time on text, phone. I saw her every 4 weeks at her house. They were long, deep consultations. She gave me a world of education. She has a massive bookshelf of all incredible, informative, empowering birth books. Every topic under the sun you could think of is there. It's just opening my world up to education and really just empowering me and supporting me. And I would leave her consult being like, oh my gosh, this is just the most incredible journey of my life. And I just think, how many women don't feel that ever?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like millions.
And so many don't. So I'm just like, I meet women who I'm like, gosh, I loved being pregnant. I love birth. I love the whole physiology of it. And when you learn, like when I went to the calm birth course, and it's actually designed by a male.
Yeah. Interesting.
Peter, I forget his last name, but Peter, actually saw him when I went again, because I went again when I was pregnant with Bella. But I love learning about what a woman's body is designed to do in birth when she's not in a fearful environment. And it's incredible. And when you learn it, you can't unknow that. And as a male, hearing that going,
no, I can't unknow this.
And this is what her body's designed to do. She's not in pain. This is a contraction. It's a sensation, and it's designed to contract the uterus to help the baby birth.
Yeah, these are all normal.
It's not painful.
It sounds just as prehistoric as you've got to protect your back.
Yeah.
You've got you should be doing this. You've got to
medicalized
to protect your back.
That. Yeah.
And look what happened. Now it's like we're all awakening towards actually what's meant to happen.
Yeah. And the same thing's happening in childbirth. Like this, there's definitely a movement happening now with people who, think and feel the way you think, Rach, which is awesome. I think if we
it's very easy. Sorry, Jacko. It's very easy to see why you're so passionate.
100%
about this and why. I can see the gap that you've bridged.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of mothers who need to know this stuff.
Yeah, and they don't. I met mums who have had 4 kids that are just like, what?
So is this why you opened your gym?
So, yeah, and I mean, I didn't realize the depth of it and the power of it at that time, but it was a movement that I just felt like there was just a gap between, and I would listen to others' mums' pregnancy and birth stories at mothers groups, whatever, and think, gosh, I know so much, and I'm not even, quote, qualified. And I'm like, but you don't need to be. Like, have you heard this book? No. What's that book? I'm like, oh my gosh, like read this book. Have you done this course? No. And I'm like, why does nobody care about this, or like know that this is about, like, this is a thing, or why it's important? It was just like, oh my gosh, I've got to be a leader in this field. And for me, the exercise element was the route that I took. But then I didn't realize, what Strong Mum is capable today. It's exercise, it's nutrition, it's motherhood, it's parenting, it's birth advice. It's everything can come under that umbrella.
It's just not
motherhood.
The nuts and bolts of exercise.
Yeah, it's just not exercise. That's almost a small part of what I do now, and I guess where Strong Mum's future is going to go. But I love just empowering women and really getting them to see that you always have a choice, and don't be afraid to question the why.
For sure. And the same goes with training as well, I guess. Yeah. Like women definitely have preconceived ideas about how they should train.
Train during pregnancy.
Do you have any, I guess, if we do get more towards the exercise and training, during pregnancy, post-pregnancy, where do you see women, I don't want to say go wrong, but, maybe go wrong with their preconceived ideas, or how does training change whilst the woman's pregnant and after?
Yeah, great question. So really, in my experience, there's 2 ends of the spectrum for pregnancy training. There's majority of the women who are too terrified to do anything, and whether that's been there's no support from their GP or their care provider to start something new, or to go to the gym. I mean, like yoga and aquanatal and all those types of things are generally recommended. This is starting to change, but that's usually the concept of like, no, I shouldn't be doing anything strenuous while I'm pregnant, and I don't want to because I'm exhausted. Or the other end of the spectrum, which is small, but it exists, of extreme athletes who are then have such an identity to the way that they physically perform. They push themselves to extreme limits that cause some I don't like to say damage, but
physiological changes.
To what's already changing and getting a lot of pressure, such as the
exacerbates it.
The abdominal wall and the pelvic
Let's just
floor,
say
which
exposes them to unnecessary risk.
Yep. And also, or there's a big element of guilt and resentment in the fact that they have to lower their weights.
Blame their baby.
Yeah, they're all like, you know, a real FOMO, especially in my education and my certification of pre and postnatal, the whole CrossFit world of like, you know, how I guess disempowering it is when you can't function or perform the way that you used to. And it's like, I don't want to scale back. I'm strong. I can do this. But it's also knowing that there is a big need and power in surrender and just allowing yourself to regress as necessary to enhance your recovery and to come back stronger. Like, so there's just two ends of the spectrum. I don't actually train a lot of pregnant women. The only ones that I do are the ones that I was working with beforehand, because they're very confident in their body. It's become a part of their lifestyle. They trust me. And they've formed that positive relationship with moving their body that they feel is one thing that they want to hold on to.
Right.
When we come down and when we revert back to talking about, you know, doing something for yourself, it's like, well, if that's what you're going to do for yourself before, during and after that helps keep you alive and keep that part of you that you want to hold on to, then that's how you want to see it. But a lot of women don't. And it's so hard to start exercising during pregnancy. There are so many changes your body is going through. The last thing you need is try and add a new habit in there. Like, you are so incredibly tired. The amount of energy that's required to form the foundations of supporting a life in the first 12 weeks is ridiculous. You know, you breathe, like, your cardiac output increases, your demand for oxygen increases, your blood supply doubles like instantly. So you have a baby that your app tells you is the size of a sesame, but you walk up a set of stairs and you literally feel like you've just done 30 minutes of extreme cardio on this whole block. Like, you're just fathomed by how incredibly hard life is, let alone trying to exercise, or someone saying to you, why don't you start exercising?
During pregnancy or post?
Yeah, during.
Yeah. So I mean, Tara is like right now, she's wiped out when she gets home from work.
I was napping. Like, I could barely drive home from work.
Yeah.
Because you forget that growing a child requires energy, and where do you get most of your energy preservation? When you rest,
correct,
when you sleep. So
do you think with the fitness industry as a whole, do you think practically that it accommodates for new mums very well?
No. I mean, I kind of winged it myself, like I said, but I was seeing a personal trainer at the time who said, oh yeah, train my wife. I know what to do. But after sort of learning my certification, I'm like, and I was very in tune with my body. So when he told me to run for the warm up and I could feel a lot of pressure in the pelvic floor, I thought, I'm just going to walk. Yeah. He's not watching, I'll just walk. You know, but then I was doing bench press sets on my back, lying flat, which...
No.
No. Look, I didn't feel anything, because if I did, I would have changed. I didn't feel anything. So there's a big sort of misconception about lying on your back, right? So most people will say from 20s, people will say from sort of 22, 25 weeks, you shouldn't straight out lay on your back. Most of the studies will say, like, if a woman doesn't feel dizzy, out of breath, and if it's a short period of time, which is not really defined, but that in small bouts, it's okay. It's also got to keep in mind how a woman gets up and down on her back. She'll use a lot of intra-abdominal pressure, so there's things like that. Is it necessary? Like, can you at least put a 15-degree incline on the bench? Like, again, so it's not huge, but there were things that I was like, well, I don't feel like he really thought of that or knew about that. He didn't tell me to roll over on my side when I got up off the bench press. Could he have chosen a shoulder press instead? Like, there was things where I was like, as much as you trained his wife, doesn't know.
It's just that nothing went wrong.
Yes, nothing went wrong. So, and you know, it was great that he was like supportive of me wanting to be active, but there was a lot of things that could have been programmed more optimally, which is where I was like, okay,
your cert 3 and 4 doesn't accommodate for that.
Yeah, no. So, absolutely not. And again, when I was doing my pre and postnatal certification, over 85% of women will have children or have had children. Like, and think about how many trainers out there will train women.
Yes.
At some point, they will become pregnant or they have had a child. And once postpartum, always postpartum. Whether you just had a baby or had a baby 20 years ago, you need to know what childbirth and pregnancy has done to that lady's body and how that will show up in the way that you program and her symptoms. And even though her babies are gone and having their own babies, if she's never looked at her pelvic floor and the way her abdominal separation, it could have just lied dormant of how it recovered just after she had the baby. So like there's so many things you need to know in training a woman that
it's funny
has
for
had
us.
a baby.
It's funny for us like physios and chiros, like with treating women during and post-pregnancy. Like I know for myself it's something I rarely see and I'll always refer. And
that's amazing that you do that.
And I think that's pretty common as well, though. Like I'd feel much more comfortable with someone seeing, Tammy or seeing whoever it is that we refer to for these things than seeing myself. And I think that might be missed a little bit sometimes in personal trainer world.
I think also the amount of postpartum pain in women that are, 10 plus years past birth, that come in with that chronic hip pain, but we as chiros physios forget that hip pain is a common symptom of pelvic floor dysfunction and pelvic floor issues or pelvic floor trauma. And so checking for that, like we're talking about, you need to check for these things in an educated, systematic way, not let's just chat.
Yes,
you need to examine this.
And again, women will just be like, but I'm a mum now, so I just feel like it's supposed to feel different down there.
There's a lot of
jump
acceptance
of my kids. I'm like, yes, you can.
It's unnecessary acceptance, isn't it? And it's not until they get educated in a place like this, or in a gym like yours, where they realize, no doubt that's gonna. And then when you say to them, they'll say, oh, of course it does. But isn't it meant to?
Yeah.
I think this whole chat's opened at least my eyes to during pregnancy, post-pregnancy, you have to have the right information available to you and you have to have the right people available to you. That is a big I don't want to say success, but with how smoothly everything goes and
how empowering an experience
and how empowering it's going and how satisfied you as a mother will be at the end of this as well.
You want to think back to the birth of your child. I'd imagine if I'm going to embody a mother, which let me just embody. Hang on.
Female dick.
Hang on. And
Nectaria.
Yes, that's right. Well, that's yes, and imagine that if I was to think back to an experience or an event like that, which is life changing. So for me, it's thinking back to my wedding.
Yeah.
If I think back to my wedding or back to the day I proposed to my wife, if that doesn't meet my expectation, which it did, all my expectations were met because we planned, like you said.
Yep.
And if you think back and you actually think back in horror of what happened that day and how someone else made you feel and the lack of instant connection that you had with that child, your child, that you've just given birth to, and all you're thinking about back to the birth is the obstetrician or the position you're in or the pain or whatever.
The lack of voice you had, or how disempowered you felt, or unsupported, so many feelings.
It doesn't become a celebration anymore.
There's a general sort of, diagnosis movement called birth trauma. It's huge, and so many women don't talk about it, but it's the trauma that they hold on to from a birth experience that didn't go the way.
I wonder if there's a link between this and postnatal depression.
Yes, 100%. I think there is. I don't even think you need to question that. 100%. You can't deny it. Again, it's paving the way for motherhood. If there's that underlying, and it's usually unresolved trauma, it's physical trauma. If you haven't physically felt the release of your child the way that your body is intended to, there's stored trauma there. I mean, if you're all prepped, ready to go, you've laboured for 12 hours, just about to push, and then there's some fetal distress and they go and give you a cesarean, as if there's not some trauma in the body of where it's got 80% of where it was supposed to be, and then boom, got cut out. And it's just fuck. How does that heal? And how does that heal spiritually, emotionally, physically? As if there isn't trauma stored there.
And when I hear you say stored trauma, I'm hearing it from a metaphysical point of view, not so much. It's more of an emotional part of your brain
Yes.
It didn't fulfill how you pictured it was going to be.
Which can show up in physical elements.
Yeah, you can can come in with pain, but then you get an MRI and it's all clear.
Yeah.
Yes. Like I guess how deep you want to go into it, but 100% I won't doubt, and I see women struggle every day, and I struggled myself, and I had somewhat a empowering birth, and if I look back, maybe there were a few things, but I just think, gosh, imagine how much more I would have struggled on top of the fact that I was already struggled with the way things turned out of my son after I had him, on top of if I didn't have a birth or a pregnancy journey that I generally felt okay about. Like, I can just imagine how much worse it would have been. And I look back now and think, God, I think I was depressed. I just didn't get diagnosed. I kind of didn't want to, because I didn't want to be labelled that. I felt like I had to attach myself to that. I kind of avoided that. But if I look back now, I definitely had all the signs, and I can see so many women that I meet, and so many women that I know I won't meet, because it's just so hard to turn up to a gym when you just can't even get out your front door.
Yeah, that's interesting. So there might be, I guess there's obviously the chemical people who are obviously more prone to depressive states, and that this is exposed post-pregnancy, but then there might also be the situational stuff as well, where pregnancy, childbirth, postpartum, not as expected,
and your experience during
losing who you are, spiritually and personally, and things like that. These things can lead to postnatal depression, and obviously you
could postulate that.
You could, exactly, and obviously there's the other side, which is the people who are chemically prone to a depressive state. So
yes.
Yeah. And there's also the element that I guess ties into what I do about losing the love for their physical form. So we are so quick to forget how incredible our body is to literally grow and birth a child, no matter how you birth it naturally or cesarean. Like we literally created life, but we are so quick to get to a phase of like, well, I want to fix my body. I need to lose my weight. I need to tone up. Like, look at my pouch, and I'm so weak, and all of this kinds of stuff. We're so quick and so easy to judge and forget how incredible our body is. But it's also like, what is the most ironic thing to me that I think people don't think about? It's so like taboo to lift heavy during pregnancy. But if we put scenarios of a mother that already has 2 children that are aged, let's say me, 2 and 5. My 5-year-old weighs 20 kilos. My 2-year-old weighs 12 kilos. Whether I go to the gym or not, I am lifting heavy things, a 20-kilo child and a 12-kilo child, all day. I'm lifting them in and out of car seats, so I'm deadlifting, I'm hip hinging, I'm putting my daughter in a high chair. I'm also holding them as they kick and scream and bend their back when they're having a tantrum. Yeah. I'm also lifting a double pram, which can weigh up to 20 kilos or more. I'm pushing it. So I'm using, and these are all in non-optimal positions. I'm not thinking of bracing my core and my pelvic floor. I'm not choosing a weight that's appropriate for my physical, for my fitness level. So I'm lifting heavy. So mothers need to be strong to deal with motherhood, whether you like it or not. So it just baffles me of people like, why would I do strength training? I'll just go and do yoga and aquanator. I'm like, well, how is that preparing you physically for motherhood? You're going to lift heavy things all day long. And if your doctor's telling you don't go to the gym, why not?
And nothing's going to knock you down even more than having acute back pain every
and
month.
like, how much do mums struggle breastfeeding? You're in that crouch position all day long. And then children are like, so many mums don't surrender to baby wearing. Yet if you think of mammals, I think humans are the only babies that are born that are unable to fend for themselves for the first at least year of life. So if you think of other, animals that are born, they can almost just walk straight away and fend for themselves in some sense. Our children cannot. They will literally die if we don't fend for them. So that's huge responsibility on a mother. And they need to be skin to skin on our chest. They need to hear our heartbeat. They need to smell us. They need to be as close. It's designed for bonding. It's designed for safety as well. They'll wake during the night to develop your milk supply and to keep them safe. So again, we've got to be prepped for sleep deprivation and a baby to be on your chest all day, and physically what that does to the body.
Yes,
and again, if you're not prepared, if your your core and your pelvic floor have not been even Like, if that woman's not even aware of how to contract them, if they've been stretched, weakened, do you know what I mean? So, like, how would that mother feel about her body and its capability postnatally if that's how painful lifting her baby is? So why would she go to the gym? So she probably thinks, but I'm just like, no, you need to go to the gym in order for you to be able to confidently carry your child around. Otherwise, you literally get to the point where you resent your child for wanting to be held so much because you're like, it's my back is killing me. I can't do this. And it's like, well, what if your body was strong? You'd be able to attend to the needs of your child more because you'd be physically able to.
Yes.
So there's so many positives.
Definitely. That's massive.
It is huge. And it starts with awareness, right? It's not necessarily that you need to be strong per se. You need to know how to at least use it. And when like the difference between a squeeze and a lift in your pelvic floor.
Yes.
And
a relax too.
And a relax.
That was a big eye opener for me because I was like, I am all over this. And then looking back in hindsight, realizing I probably had
you were just clenching the whole time.
Overactive, tight pelvic floor, which is why I probably tore so much in my first pregnancy. I didn't know that, because in my second, I had a very, very tight pelvic floor, and I was like, well, that explains why I probably tore so much, because the inability to relax and let go of that. So, and that is also can be from a lot of weightlifting as well, because you're constantly contracting, but you need an equal balance of relaxing too. So
and
again,
it really does also come down to just how well you also breathe.
Breathe is all connected to the breath.
And a really tight pelvic floor is a good indication of your fight or flight, and also your stress position, your stress level. And so there's lots of like factors, and exercise modulates all of that.
And you need to have this stuff assessed properly to know exactly what you are, and then to train it in the most effective way as well.
I had a lady that came last week to the gym, fourth baby, and from what I'd heard, had all gone through private obstetrician, and she said, I saw something on Instagram about getting a clearance letter. Do I need to get that from my obstetrician? I said, oh no, that was a clearance letter from a women's health physio to return to exercise. She goes, do I need it? And I said, well, it's not compulsory. I mean, it's not illegal for you to come and train here, but it is highly recommended, and I will guide you very safely until I know that you know how your pelvic floor and abdominal area has healed. So she ended up going, messaged me and said, wow, thank you so much. My women's health physio has actually recommended I don't go back to training yet. I've got, a 4 centimetre abdominal separation. She didn't say anything about pelvic floor, but it wouldn't surprise me. She was only 6 weeks postnatal with a new baby. She prided herself on, popped around, and on the Monday I was back at school drop off. And I'm
wow. So there's heaps of contractibility there.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
And I think women, I don't...
But how are they supposed to know?
I don't ever hear anyone say, I've got a tight pelvic floor. Every woman thinks that if they've got pelvic floor dysfunction, they just assume, it's weak.
That's exactly what I thought.
And then they go and train, they go squeeze, Kegels.
Let's keep it on.
I was like, I'm all over these Kegels. And then when I went, I was like, oh, wow. It's just as bad almost, because it needs to be able to relax.
As we've started to uncover, and it's definitely been over the past 2 to 3 years where we've started to uncover the importance of women's health, and especially the role of physiotherapy and health practitioners in women's health, whether you're a practitioner as a primary healthcare practitioner or someone that's a trainer that is well educated and certified. And this is where, like, for me, as someone who has a very strong interest in sport and has done a lot of work in sport over the past 10 years, and chronic pain, if it's not those two, I'm getting closer and more open to just referring them because how the hell am I supposed to know everything about women's, especially because it's pivotal as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
It has a huge impact on the next 10 years and their immediate future, and then the long-term future. It's like, how can I then say
even
safely?
Pretend,
You just can't confidently,
No, I can't confidently advise.
And as soon as you think that, that's when you should be doing what you're doing.
And I feel like there's I can know, like, I've seen things on Instagram of other trainers training their partners pregnant and priding on 1RMs, and I'm like, do you know what that... So her holding, like the Valsalva maneuver, her holding her breath the implications of that. So there's an increase in blood pressure. There's an immense amount of pressure into your abdomen, pelvic floor.
Yeah.
And you are promoting women, pushing their bodies to extreme limits during pregnancy. So you are a representation of a fitness in the fitness industry. And if I was a pregnant woman naive and thinking, oh yeah, see, she did it, and that's her second baby, look, that must be safe. And I'm like, you haven't done a pre and postnatal certification. I don't care that it's her second baby and the first one survived. You don't have the right to train her and publicly show it and take pregnant women into your classes. You are doing them a disservice, and you're doing yourself a disservice.
You're actually going against the duty of care that you owe to all your clients. And that's actually like
thinking you can do it all.
And if you have had a baby or someone that has a baby, it does not mean you know everything. I don't know what I know just because I've had a baby. I know because I had to study it. I have to know every possible scenario. So when women come to me and say, oh, I had this, and I'm, oh yeah, and they're like,
So you've done your certifications, but then you've also done further study.
Yeah. So I did the Cert 3 and Cert 4, and obviously there's like about 2 slideshows on like pregnancy training. Cool.
Yes.
And then I did an extensive pre and postnatal certification that went through every element of the physiological changes, the mindset changes each trimester, postnatally. It goes through even like pregnancy loss awareness. Like, so there's a whole other world. Like, if you really want to be a leader as a coach, you need to know every possible thing that a woman could endure preconception, pregnancy, and postnatally to be able to really serve and be the coach you need to be. And it's like, just because you had a baby doesn't mean you can train someone, and you train during your pregnancy doesn't mean you train someone. It's like saying, well, I've given birth to a baby, so I can help you birth your baby too. It's like, no, you go and do a certification, extensive studies to help other women birth their babies.
You could probably help us the exact same situation in someone else.
Yes.
Are there any specific courses you'd recommend for personal trainers?
So I did. I've done a few. So the basis of what I did, which hands down was the most informative, up-to-date, evidence-based, was Girls Gone Strong. They do an online pre- and postnatal certification. And they've teamed up with a massive team of experts in all fields, so obstetricians, nutritionists, dietitians, physiotherapists from all around the world. And you've got a little info section on the front. Incredible, all evidence-based, all the studies are there, really specific, almost like, and I loved it because it was kind of like with the lying on your back. It wasn't like, you cannot lie on back because that's what Google says. It was like, well, it depends. This is what this study says, but you also got to think about this. Evidence. And there's also there's not a lot of research, because who is going to put their hand up to go into a study during pregnancy or postnatally? So there's not a lot of hard evidence for a lot of things. They can just. It'd
be hard to get ethics approved on it too.
Yes,
of course, because it could really,
especially on
it could
something
go
like
wrong.
That.
Yeah. So you've got to understand that as well. But then there's a lot of common sense that is sort of laid out in the book as well, and anything that can be backed up is, anything isn't, sort of specifies that. But it was fantastic. And then there's also Burrell Education, Burrell. Jenny Burrell runs that. She's quite big in the UK. There's an Australian branch that ran some face-to-face. I did a lot of prac courses with that as well, so I've done that. And then I've just read an extensive amount of evidence-based books on all things nutrition.
Yeah, perfect.
But so they're definitely the top two, and
the courses can only teach you so much.
Yeah, and I also think, obviously, my personal experience definitely helped as well, and it also makes it a lot more real for me as well. But there's definitely pre and postnatal. There's guys out there who are experts in pre and postnatal. One of the top women's health physios, Anthony Lowe, is a male.
Oh, no, Anthony, yeah.
So
quite well. The physio detective.
Yeah, the physio detective. So him and Marika Hart have a podcast, and Marika Hart is one of the contributors in the Girls Gone Strong, and she's phenomenal in women's health. And I've learned a lot from her as well outside of the certification. So I've done a lot of little courses as well, but they're the basis, and they are very heavy into the science of pregnancy, and which I frothed on. It's a whole other world, and anyone that will look into it will realize, holy moly, how much.
It's a different realm,
100%
altogether.
Yeah,
absolutely,
definitely.
What are your top three bits of like top 3 golden nuggets that you'd give to a woman. No, wait.
Okay.
That has never fallen pregnant. That wants to.
About just anything?
Top 3 nuggets.
So in terms of birth, I would say that I don't even know. There's so much I want to say, but I would just say that your body is designed to birth, and if you look at the physiology of birth and the hormones, there's a cocktail of hormones that are produced when you are not in a state of fear that enable your body to endure the most incredible things. To know that you were born with that privilege as a woman. You've already got it.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Secondly, to know that your children will be the absolute greatest gift in life if you can lean into the resistance. Anytime you feel a resistance, a trigger, if you can lean in that and reflect it back to the work that you need to do on yourself, you will become the most free and loving version of yourself. The world that my children have opened up for me is just incredible. I didn't realise how not free I was and how much I didn't feel. And also knowing, third thing is that, I can't remember where I read it, but a woman's ability to feel emotions is incredibly heightened after she becomes a mother. So we feel things so much deeper, which means that, to me, we can enjoy life so much richer than we did before, because we've got that ability to just really feel things. And I think that is also a gift, and it can be a hindrance in some ways because you really struggle, but we also, as women, as mothers, we have the ability and the fire to set stronger boundaries and to love deeper, to see the world in a different way. And that's also another gift as well. Like, becoming a mum is just seriously a gift, but it's not very common for me to hear women being open to that possibility and not drowning in the change of motherhood, because we just don't have that self-awareness or confidence or information to know how to lean into the lessons that our children are sent to you.
That's great, Rach.
Wow.
Awesome. Some good nuggets there.
Pretty proud of that, actually.
That's unreal. Really
it's
good.
on the record.
Yeah.
No, look, it's. I think there's been some great lessons in today's podcast, Rach. I think for anyone who is, as Nico said, like looking to get pregnant, going through pregnancy, postpartum, and is curious or interested in the way they're giving birth, how they can, I guess, maximize their experience as a mother. And obviously work in their fitness and health around that as well. So I think it's there's been some really great lessons in there. So thank you for coming.
No, thanks for having me. Like, I love that you two blokes were interested to hear me.
Oh, mate,
talk
it's all
about
coming up
it.
for me. Don't worry.
Yeah, like, what a gift.
The more lessons, the better.
Your wives, like, so it baffles me as well that men aren't really thinking that they need to know about this stuff. But what a gift that you can be on that page, like, and that's what my husband's done for me. Like I said at the beginning, I'm sort of the one that's been questioning things, and having a home birth was big for him, but I was like, if you can just trust me, that is the greatest gift you can give me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because if you can hold me up whilst I lead and really find this higher version of myself, that's all I need from you. So I take my hat off to you guys for being even open to having this conversation.
It'll be our child too. And I definitely feel like it's I owe it to my wife.
100%. And to our child, I think what I've gotten from this, obviously, going into fatherhood, is I need to, and Tara needs to continue to be the best versions of ourselves, to be the best parents we can be. So
yeah.
I think that's 100%. A really big lesson.
How do people reach out to you?
So they can find me on Instagram @_thestrongmama, MAMA. Also got Strong Mamas, so that's @strongmamas_AUS. But we're also rebranding our gym to Strong Fams because we want to work with
Hell
blokes
yeah.
too. So that's something a bit exciting. So Strong Mamas will still be an awesome movement as it is, but it'll be going all online. And we're opening doors for Strong Fams in our Dural gym. So that'll be launching next year, which is very exciting because, my husband came on board and we just feel like we can serve more people and really help families unite with themselves. And as a parent, it's not easy to put yourself first, but it's not hard either. We can show you how. And I guess because, looking after yourself is not for you, just for you. It's for your family too. And if both parents can be on board, imagine the power of that instead of just the mum.
For sure.
So,
Awesome.
Love that.
It's been a pleasure having you on.
No, my
Thank
pleasure
you, Rachel.
too. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rach.